Welcome back to A Numbers Game with Ryan Gordusky. Thank you guys for being here again. So I have some big news to share with you, something that I've been working on for about a year. For those who aren't aware of my career or my history, back in 2021, my godson was in school in the 4th grade, and his teacher made his class via Zoom, this is during COVID, during lockdown, read a book called Race Cars about how police profile black cars and not white cars, and having a whole conversation about police brutality. So that was highly inappropriate, especially in a room where a lot of people's parents were police officers. So I became outraged, and I called a local elected official and PTA and all the rest of us. And I just wondered, how big of a problem is this nationwide? And so I really became determined then to create a school board super PAC, something that had never been done before, to get involved in local elections and try to help candidates get elected to office running for school board on conservative policies. And the PAC has become, and I don't like to brag about myself, but it's probably been the most successful local government political action committee in the country, especially on the right. There's no question, I don't think. I've helped elect hundreds of conservatives for school board office across the country, and they've done amazing things with what they've done since they've been elected. Well, after years of doing this, I would often hear back from candidates after they were elected and saying, what do we do? What's the next steps? What are some policy positions you can advise me on? What are some things I should be doing differently? And I didn't know the answer. And there were not a lot of institutions that were spending the necessary time talking about K through 12 public education, sometimes in politics. And I'll speak from a conservative standpoint because I know it best, but I know it's true on the progressive side. Where there is a lot of money in something, there is a lot of interest because people pay for studies and for lobbying and for all the rest of it. There is a lot of money in school choice and in school vouchers. And not saying those things aren't good. They are many times, but there is a lot of money. So to conservatives, those ideas have become silver bullets. That's our solution to all educational questions, regardless of the fact that a majority of kids go to public school and will go to public school for the foreseeable future. And you have to address where our kids are going, what they're doing. You cannot wait until enough voucher programs are built. And also, even though some kids are not going to public schools anymore, they're going to private schools, they're going to charter schools, the budgets for public schools still exist. They're affecting your property value. They're affecting your taxes. They're affecting so much. There's still a whole unionized teachers union in many states that are, having effects on our politics. You have to address these issues. You can't just ignore them. So I said, okay, we have to figure out something to do where we are advising people in a nonpartisan way, in case there are moderates and even some progressives or some Democrats who want to know more about certain issues, that we could sit there and fill that void. So last year, I created a foundation, a nonprofit called the 1776 Project Foundation, where we look at issues regarding public education, AI, technology, Singapore math, phonics, history, budget information, truancy, discipline. These are real complicated issues. And I always say about school districts are like snowflakes. They all look alike from afar, but when you're under a microscope, they're all very, very different, and their needs are different. And it's very important to address them on an individual basis, right? School board members come to us and say, this is the issue. Let's figure out a solution. Now, there may be a blueprint, but they've modified that blueprint on this issue or for this specificity or that specificity. So it's something we've been working with, and I tapped my colleague and my employee, Aidan Buzzetti, to run it. He's brilliant. He's a really hard worker. He's someone I've really had a lot of pleasure getting to know and call him a colleague. It's one of the great things is meeting some certain people, and Aidan's definitely, a 5-star superstar. So anyway, I tap Aidan to run the foundation. Aidan sits there and takes the job, and he's been doing great work, and he starts building out this nonprofit. And one day, him and I were in California for some fundraising events, and we're on a work trip, and we're in a car. And I brought up a story to him that I had remembered from years ago, from watching a local news show from years ago in a state that I do not live in. My brain is very strange, by the way, because I will recall a local news channel doing it like an investigation into Bigfoot or this story or whatever the case is, but I won't know why I walk into the kitchen. Like, I don't understand why I have to, certain things live rent-free in my head all the time. But things I need to know, like there'll be a word, I'm like, what is that word again? And I just completely blank. And then like 7 hours later, I want to scream at the air as I remember it. Anyway, so the story that I remembered in that car with Aidan was their school district in Los Angeles, in the neighborhood of Silver Lake, if you know the Los Angeles area. Their student population was changing pretty dramatically. Gentrification had really brought in a lot of white families into the district, and Los Angeles School District has a rule that if a district becomes 30% white or greater, they lose funding. Well, later on in the day, I spoke at an event full of conservatives in Los Angeles. I brought this up and no one had heard about it. None of them had ever heard this story when I brought this up. That this is how their city functioned. This is how their local unified public school district functioned. So I got back in the car with Aidan and we headed our way to the airport. And I told him that this policy is blatant racial discrimination against whites. It is absolute racial discrimination, and we have to do something about it. Like no one even knows about this, and thousands upon thousands of kids are affected by this. Not only even just white kids, but also minority kids who are in a school district that's too white. They're all affected by this. This is racism. If we don't do it, no one's going to do it. So I'm very excited to announce that the 1776 Project Foundation, which I founded, is suing Los Angeles Unified School District for racial discrimination against white students. We spoke to parents in the district. We spoke to policymakers. We spoke to so many people to discuss what was going on. And we've found plaintiffs. And this is a real lawsuit. Like we're suing LA Unified for racial discrimination against white students. I know this sounds redundant, but racial discrimination is wrong. It's wrong when you do it against Black Americans, and it's wrong when you do it against white Americans. Democrats like to pat themselves on the back and believe that this law, they're the great defenders against racial discrimination when they have become their biggest champions. You saw it in the Harvard case against Asian Americans with affirmative action. You're seeing it now in Virginia, where a Democratic legislator named Jeon Ward, I think is pronounced the name of his, Jeon Ward, on her first day with a unified Democratic government, put forward a bill to openly discriminate against white males who want to work for the government as a contractor. The bill said that for discretionary contracts under $100,000, white men are barred from even being considered unless the work is literally free. They're not getting any compensation for it, or there's no competition. And even then, this bill allows for agencies to award contracts to women or minority-owned firms that are 5% more expensive than the bid from white business owners. It is discrimination. It's a tax on being white and being male. And in the case of Los Angeles Unified School District, this is the first major education lawsuit regarding racial discrimination against white students in the country. This is the first one against public schools that are doing this. I mean, this is like the Harvard case, which was about Asian Americans, for white Americans, for white students who tax dollars are being used to discriminate against them. It is my deep concern that as time has come on, that there is this push by the far left to increasingly take on this narrative of racial resentment against whites. And it will only continue. And that is why it is so important right now to take on these discriminatory laws. So that way more aren't created. So that way we have, judicial precedent to clamp down on this, to stop it, and to hopefully end this kind of discrimination. So yes, I'm very excited to announce this. I've been working on this for a year. It's been, we are willing to take this as far as possible. We are willing, if they want to take this to the Supreme Court, we are going to meet them at that. We are going to take this anywhere it possibly can. We are determined to get this law reversed. And if we find out more, where we find out more schools are doing this, we're going to take it to them too. We're going to use this as the blueprint of what the law defines as racial discrimination, what is discriminatory against white students, and we are going to be there in this case and possibly more cases in the future if they're brought to us. So I'm very excited about this, and I will keep you guys posted. So coming up for this episode is the president of the 1776 Project Foundation, my good friend, my employee, my colleague, Aidan Buzzetti. He's going to sit there and tell everybody the merits of this lawsuit. I'm very excited. Stay tuned. Aidan Buzzetti is the president of the 1776 Project Foundation, my colleague for the last 4 years. Aidan, thank you for coming on. Not that you had that much of a choice, but thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me on, Ryan. It's always a pleasure.
Aidan, so before we go into like the actual lawsuit, what was your, and I want to know your actual thing, because you worked with me for a while now. What was your reaction when I told you about this story?
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really believe it. I thought it was just one of the things that you say, but I mean, it was
One
true.
of the things I say.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you say the craziest things, and they're always true, by the way.
Yeah,
But like,
okay.
I
You don't have
didn't
to fact
believe it.
check now.
I didn't believe it, or I guess I thought it was possible, but I didn't understand how explicit the program actually was in the school district itself.
Well, when we went to go do that speaking event later on the day, I brought it up and no one believed it or had heard of it. Do you remember that?
Yes, it was. There was like an audible gasp from people, and then every single person that came up to you, they were like, "Oh my gosh, is this actually true?" Every
Yeah.
single person.
Yeah, it was the one thing that was kind of wild. And when I said to you, like, I want to see if we could, I will credit Aidan. Sometimes I throw Aidan in almost impossible tasks, and 99 times out of 100, he gets them done. This, if you ever see like The Devil Wears Prada, it was very much a get me a copy of the new Harry Potter book moment. But I was like, let's sue LA Unified. And I mean, that was really like, I mean, were you like, Ryan's really lost his mind at this moment?
Maybe only a little bit. I was like, how am I supposed to do this? Figured it out, luckily enough. But yeah, it was
a lawyer in like 3 months, learning all the legalities of the whole entire process. So, okay, let's go into the actual lawsuit. What does LA Unified do that is racially discriminatory?
So they have a program called the PHBAO, which stands for predominantly Hispanic, Asian, Black, or other non-Anglo. And through that PHBAO program, which comes from a decades-old order, which we can get into in just a minute, they use the racial makeup of their individual schools to assign specific preferences. So the schools that are designated PHBAO, which means that their student population is less than 30% white. They get a set ratio for the class size. They get more funding for teachers and administrators. They have set parent-teacher conferences, as well as more points in their magnet application system. So if you come from a racial minority background or from those schools, you get additional points when you are applying to a magnet program.
So basically, as long as you don't go to a school that is 30% white or greater, you get all these benefits that are excluded from whites, and not even just whites, excluded from non-whites who happen to have 1 in 3 kids in the same classroom being white.
Right.
Extraordinarily discriminatory. Where does this rule, or like this, not law, but I guess this rule, come from?
So it comes from a court order from the early 80s. I believe it was 1981. Actually stems originally from a lawsuit in the 60s. In the 60s, Los Angeles Unified was majority white. And so they had a lawsuit, a desegregation lawsuit brought against the district. It took 20 years to resolve. And in the 1981 order, they basically recommended that the school district, they basically set the ratio. So 25-1, or 27-1 or lower student-teacher ratio for the classrooms in majority non-white schools. What they didn't do was demand that the school district set a higher ratio for what would be a quote-unquote white school. But the most striking thing in the court order, which really led us to proceed with this, was that the 1981 order, the judge said that the circumstances, the makeup of the district had no relevance to what it was 20 years prior when the suit was first filed. So in that 20-year period, the district went from majority white to majority non-white. And they They just wanted to end the lawsuit. So the judge wrote in the order that they just needed to bring a resolution to the case. So it was a ruling that they also found no actual segregation in the school district, which was one of the main reasons that it was filed. So they basically suggested a bunch of solutions to the district that over the last 40 years has been morphed into a program that is actually discriminatory against white students and Middle Eastern students as well.
Right. Because I think this is a really important detail. What is considered white is ever changing, right? Middle Easterners are considered white. Persians are considered white. People from the Caucasus are considered white. Certain Latin American countries are considered white. There's no like strict terminology. It's this moving goalpost.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny when we spoke to a few reporters and journalists about this, their answer was like, oh, well, there is in an imbalance, almost as if every school is required to be 25, 25, 25, 25, like literally like perfect proportion, even with no change. What makes it odd to me is if you're in a city that is, you know, minority white, with the student population being extremely minority white, how is there an expectation that you're going to have an even distribution of a very small population? Like that makes no sense. And the fact that a lot of these post-civil rights litigation and laws, they're for a country that doesn't exist anymore. Like the populations aren't there. We used to be a biracial country. We're now a multiracial country. So that in itself is always kind of like strange and daunting. Tell me about the process of reaching out to parents and what they were afraid of about joining this lawsuit.
Yeah. So when we started the process early on, we worked obviously with parent groups, individual parents, trying to find any connection to people who currently have student or children in the school district, currently students or in some way or another had standing for this lawsuit. And there were a couple main roadblocks to it. The first was that many of the parents who could afford to took their children out of the public school system.
Yeah.
So that alone eliminated a number of parents and students because they simply didn't believe in the public school system that it was good anymore. The second was for the people who did have children, who did have standing and were members of our organization, they were afraid of retaliation. So if you look at our complaint, our plaintiffs are anonymous. We are representing them. We are suing on their behalf, but they requested anonymity because they are afraid of retaliation from both the school district, because they currently have students in Los Angeles public schools, but also, the community at large. It is a very liberal community, and it's hard to tell what the social ramifications will be. Talking to the parents and one, giving them the rundown of what's happening and how they've been discriminated against, and then two, convincing them to take part in this lawsuit was, I wouldn't say it was a large challenge, but it did require many extended conversations to give people assurance that they weren't going to face the social consequences and ostracization of their community as a result of this.
For people who are political and very political involved, interested in politics and involved, it seems like, how could you not want to sit there and do this? But for normal everyday people, it is why would you want to put yourself in the firing line? So the parents that did come forward, are extremely brave for getting involved in this. We're working now to try to we file this lawsuit in federal court. What are next steps? Let's say I have a question, perfect question for you. Let's say you're a parent listening to this and you have a kid in LA Unified. Is it possible to sit there and try to join this lawsuit?
Yes. So as of the day that we filed it, which would be January 20th, we have, I believe it's between 30 to 60 days. I think closer to the 30 side, where we can make changes to the complaint before we officially serve it to the school district. So there's about a month window where parents could join as plaintiffs on this lawsuit, or organizations that represent parents in that area could do what we have done and sue or join this on behalf of their members. Once we serve it to the district, then we start the whole legal process where we serve it, they file a response, probably try to get it dismissed. We respond to that, and the back and forth continues. And they have
And the
We
legal
have
bills continue.
and the legal bills continue, and the billable hours skyrocket, and all of that fun stuff for budgeting. But so we have 30 days before we serve it. Then they have, I think, 20 days to respond. So we're looking at, just for the opening period of this case, at least 2 to 3 months before we really get into the meat of it.
Right. And I think the discovery part of it's going to be very, very interesting if they go there and if they go further. I think that this lawsuit is really important. One, because we're willing to take it as far as we possibly can, to make sure this law has ramifications and has changed, but also because it could serve as a model for other districts that are doing discriminatory practices against. I mean, there was such a pushback of the civil rights laws against, discrimination against minorities, that for some reason discrimination against whites became acceptable to certain people. So I think this would become a good case study for people for looking at other places that have discrimination against white students that, that need to be changed, certainly. What are some other things the nonprofit 76 Project Foundation is working on right now?
So we've been working a lot actually on disciplinary policies and artificial intelligence. AI in particular is a real hot button issue for many, many reasons. And many of the school board members that we've been working with are split. You know this, of course, but on the PAC side, many of the people who were running for school board during the pandemic were very much pro-transparency. They were anti-lockdown, anti-mask mandate. They were very skeptical of technology in the classroom, and just a lot of the waste that comes along with it.
Yeah, learning by Zoom, which proved in the end not to be that effective.
And so many of these people have been fairly in favor of cell phone bans. But now that AI has rapidly become an issue, of course, people are saying to them, it's such an important tool. Kids need to know how to use it to navigate the modern world and workforce, which I think is a little bit overstated. But they've been, many of these school districts have budgets in the millions and billions. So they have a lot of vendors coming to them, promising them miracle solutions and tools.
This is a This is something that people do not understand when it comes to education. You're like, how is there so much waste? If you are a superintendent of a county-wide school district, especially like in Arizona or in Florida, not Arizona, Florida, California, Nevada, or a major school district outside of Dallas or outside of New York, the amount of vendors who come to you constantly, who throw parties, who throw retreats or whatever, and just peddle stuff to you is wild. There was I remember this one school district in outside Dallas where they found out they had 3 of the same reading programs. You remember the story?
Mm-hmm.
Like they were
Yeah.
like literally this new superintendent was like, this is crazy. And that's why one of the women we work with, who is a school board member out in Florida, she always says, you need to do audits immediately upon entering office, becoming a
Mm-hmm.
school board member, because the amount of like kind of swamp inside even school districts is immense as far as just
Mm-hmm.
crazy spending goes.
Exactly. And with AI, a lot of these AI tools are kind of insane, actually. Relevant, the LA Unified School District spent several $1 million on a chatbot within the last 2 years. And they had a huge scandal because the startup that they used to build the chatbot broke the law and they processed student data overseas, which is, I mean, it violates existing federal privacy laws, among other things, their contract with the district. But the superintendent went on a huge media tour talking about this custom chatbot, and lo and behold, it put student privacy at risk.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of things with this technology that board members and superintendents are still trying to grapple with. And so we hosted an AI working group retreat with school board members in October, and we've been working with them to craft and pass AI policies in school districts at large. We've been taking a middle ground approach where basically between grades 1 through 8, in elementary school, no technology, no AI. In middle school, we've actually had school districts adopt AI ethics courses, so they learn how to engage with AI and chatbots, hopefully in a more responsible way. and then maybe allowing some experimentation in the high school level, depending on what the schools want to do. But we've been helping set up that framework. We've had a few school boards pass it now. We've also been pushing a 250th resolution. It is the semi-quincentennial in the U.S. We have over 20 school districts that have passed a resolution that celebrates the semi-quincentennial and instructs the superintendents and principals to host civic events and bring in speakers and talk about our founding principles and our documents. So I'm very excited to actually see those start to play out. Some of them happen as early as April, and some even continue into next year, depending on what the board wants to do. So we've been working on those projects, and we've had an amazing response from school board members so far.
Yeah, you've done the foundation's only a year old, and it's done really incredible work because you run it and you're a star. So thank you so much for doing this podcast. Where can we go to donate to the foundation, tax deductible, or just visit to see what what we're up to and what the lawsuit's up to?
Yeah, they should go to foundation1776.org. We're going to be posting updates there. You can also become a member of our organization, and we'll be sending out regular updates on what's happening in LA.
Well, Aidan, thank you for coming on this podcast.
Thank you.
Now it's time for Ask Me Anything. Guys, I'm so happy I told you guys my inbox was empty because you filled it. So I appreciate that so much. I have plenty of questions to get to. If you want to be part of Ask Me Anything, I will get to all your questions, by the way. If you want to be part of Ask Me Anything, email me ryan@numbersgamepodcast.com, ryan@numbersgamepodcast.com. This makes the whole show. I love Ask Me Anything. First question was actually a YouTube comment by a guy named Randy Hurlsman. He writes about the last episode where I talked about ICE deporting so many people at places were losing congressional districts. States were losing congressional districts for the 2030 reapportionment. He writes, interesting analysis for the electoral college implications. Is there any reason to believe that ICE is deporting more people from blue states than red? Seems like big red agricultural states have a lot to lose too. That is a great question. And no, they're actually deporting more people from red states than blue. But it doesn't matter. And let me tell you first, the reason they're deporting more people from red states than blue states is because the states are complying with federal immigration law. So when someone is arrested for a DUI and they're illegally here in the country, a detainer is put out for them, they're picked up by ICE, and then they are deported. That is not happening in blue states. In blue states, they are arresting them and then releasing them, even with an ICE detainer, to make sure that ICE cannot pick them up and deport them. Blue states are openly re-releasing criminals back into communities. The states with the most ICE arrests as of October the 15th, which is the last date the federal government has updated, was Texas with 46,632 ICE arrests, Florida with 20,118, California with 17,637, Georgia with 8,365, New York with 7,203, and Arizona with 5,868. The difference is those red states that I listed can afford mass deportation because of so many Americans moving to those states, right? Even though Texas lost 46,000, I guess people would be counted in a census for the purposes of reapportionment, they're gaining well more than that because Americans want to live in a no-tax state with, less regulations. California losing 17,600 people cannot afford to lose people because they're already losing native-born Americans. So no, red states are getting more people deported and arrested by ICE than blue states are, but blue states have more to lose because less Americans want to move there. Okay, Emily writes, short-time listener, first-time caller. Just wanted to say, hi, Emily. Long-time speaker now, but I'm happy you're here. Just wanted to say, I think you truly hit the nail on the head on how you answered your fan mail question on Friday's episode. It's almost like your thought was in my head. I haven't been able to personally put into words about how we are all children of God, and the us versus them or orange man bad dynamic is really impacting our communities and society. I feel like how you answered your question is extremely clippable for social media reels. I should probably clip it. I never thought of that. And is really the kind of consciousness that I personally think we should all be exposed to for everyone to take a step back and truly remember our humanity. I don't have a question right now, but I'm excited to keep listening, especially when you cover New Jersey. I'd highly recommend you interviewing Congressman Jeff Van Drew sometimes, who represents South Jersey. He was a Democrat, became a Republican. Yes, thank you, Emily. Thank you so much for saying that. That's really nice of you. I get very nervous talking about religion. I don't like talking about it. It's so many people, so many people are preachy, and I don't want to be. I want to be relatable the best I possibly can. I want to tell you how I'm personally trying to get to a better place, but what I'm doing is not what everyone should be doing. And faith's a journey. It's not a guilt trip. I'm not trying to make you, do what I do or say what I say. I hope that I can try through, through trial and error to learn to be an example for people. Like that's, especially people I have to deal with day in, day out. Like, I have all my employees are men in their 20s, and there's like 8 of them now. And 8 or 9, I forget honestly how many, but I think about this all the time, is I think about how I have to be an example, even in a workplace setting, not only for just how you conduct yourself as far as being professional goes, because I fail at that, more times than I succeed, but how to be professional, how to show ethics, and how to show ethics in what you do and to work ethically. There's a fashion designer named Brunello Cucinelli, and he makes very expensive clothes, but he has brilliant videos about the ethics of work and ethics of being an employer. And I've gotten a lot out of him saying that and what he says and what he believes. And he's a very big example for me that I've tried to repeat and tried to say, okay, how do I provide dignity to somebody that we are in a contract, they are my employee? How do I make them feel like they are respected and they are dignity and the dignity of all people? It's very, esoteric and woo woo and all the rest of it, but it's something I think about a lot, and I'm not perfect at it, but I try. And so I am using whatever little things I've learned along the way as I approach 39 years old that I can pass along and see if I could do it. So thank you. And Jeff Andrew, I would love to have Jeff Andrew on. I think he's a very interesting congressman. He's very popular in South Jersey. And I think he's the only Republican who has like 100% NARAL, which is the pro-abortion nonprofits rating. I think that, I think he's an interesting guy. He was a Democrat for a long time. I would love to talk to him. Okay. Last question for the episode. Ryan, big fan of your show. Been listening since the beginning. First became aware of you through your pager joke on CNN and appearance on Clay and Buck. Great. That's just listened to your latest show, and you talked about the books you've read. Wanted to get your take on Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead and how prescient they are for our times. Atlas Shrugged in particular. I read Atlas Shrugged in graduate school. I don't think I've ever read or listened to anything more impactful or clarifying in my mind for the differences we see today between liberals, the moochers, and conservatives, the producers. Kind regards, Ryan. Ryan, thank you. 1, amazing name. 2, thank you for listening. I have never read Atlas Shrugged or The Fountainhead, and I have not read a lot of books I should have. I was a horrible student in high school. Horrible. I cut class. I was always late, just was rebelling. And then in college, I kind of started picking up on reading, but it wasn't even until after college I started trying to become a reader. And everyone has always said to me that Ayn Rand was a terrible writer, like actually as a talent, as being a writer. I don't know. I've never read them. So I can't sit there and say, oh, that was, she's a terrible writer or whatnot. But everyone's always said, skip it, don't bother reading it. Because there's nothing worse when you're like, okay, I'm going to dedicate my time to reading an old classic, which involves, which a lot of contemporary fiction books, they're meant for contemporary audiences. So they like grab you and you're like, oh my gosh, this was an incredible book from like the get-go. I read a few recently that I thought were incredible. Wait a second. I'll tell you guys too, if you guys like fiction, which I try really hard to sit there and spend some time to read fiction, because I think it's good to change it up a little bit. The 2 that I read that I really liked was The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. I thought that book was absolutely incredible. And gosh, now I'm blanking on the other one. I will come back on my next episode and I will tell you guys the other book, the fiction book that I read that I thought was really, really good. Great Believers just happened to be right here. Modern day take on David Copperfield. It was, I will get it to you guys. I promise. I really should have prepared for that answer. Anyway, so they're meant for contemporary audiences. They're very, very good. Demon Copperhead. That's the name of it. See, this show is not always pre-written. I mean, Demon Copperhead, which I thought was really, really good, the last ending could have been a little shorter. I thought it was getting a little redundant at the end, but it was a great book. So My point is that if you're going to spend the time to read a classic and you're going to read a C.S. Lewis, you're going to read Mark Twain, you're going to read books that are extremely brilliantly written, but they are written for an audience of a certain time and they take a lot of energy to sit there and read it. You want it to at least be written very well. And everyone always told me that Ayn Rand was not an actual good writer, although the stories and the concepts were good. I should get around to it. I will try. I promise. I have a bunch of books now on my to-do list because last year I was not doing great. I'm reading a biography of William F. Buckley, which decent. It's a decent book so far. I mean, almost done with it, but it's long. And I think at some points a little, you could tell that the author is a bit of a liberal because there's a lot of focus on how William F. Buckley believed about race, which okay, it's not the sum of his entire parts. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you want to learn more about the lawsuit, you can go and check out our website. And if you like more about this podcast, please like and subscribe to the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. I will talk to you guys next episode.